Good day, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff, and we are heading down to New York. Once again, it seems to be a trend of ours in the last little while. It's been nothing but New York, and we are talking to someone I met down there on my trip, and I'm so excited to introduce you all to. This is the founder of the podcast Broadway Radio. We're speaking with James Marino. James, thank you for coming on board.
Oh, Jean-Paul, thank you so much for having us. It was so great to meet with you in New York and chat with you again, and all the support that you are giving to Broadway Radio. It just can't be, I can't thank you enough.
Oh, no problem. You know what? And that's what this community is about, supporting each other, because if we don't support each other, who will, right?
It's true. Yes.
Awesome.
Very true.
So we're going to start, as we always do in this show, a 30-second bio. So tell us in 30 seconds who James Marino is.
Well, former actor, technology guy, former bad actor. I don't want to have any illusions here that I was going to be the next great thing on Broadway. As distance grows farther away from my acting career, I recognize that I made a good choice. So started Broadway Radio, started BroadwayStars.com back in 1997. It's a news aggregator of Broadway and theatrical news around the world. And Broadway Radio was born as a supplement to Broadway Stars, and then has taken on its own life as its own podcasting platform to do news, reviews, and interviews of people. And it's been very exciting, and Broadway Radio has been up and running a little bit more than 10 years or so.
Wow. That's fantastic. Very impressive. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I mean, all it does is, it's like they say, Roger Berlin, Broadway producer extraordinaire, says the best way to make $1 million on Broadway is start with 10 million. Same sort of thing with Broadway Radio. You take away a few zeros, though.
Yes. Oh, I hear you on that one. I do. So I want to take it back to the beginning of you. Were you always into a theater and musical theater, or did it grow on you over time?
My mom was a rockette.
Ah, cool.
My mom was a rockette, so I had the thing in my family for a long time. I'm the 7th of 9 children. There's 7 boys and 2 girls, and none of the others are involved in the performing arts. Huh. So I was, unusual for my family, but my mother did have that bug, and they took me to theater and live performance and dance and things like that all since I can ever remember. So I've always been somewhat excited by the performing arts on both sides of the lights, and so I have to say from the very beginning, it's been something that I've been well acclimated to.
Did you ever go into dance?
Oh no, I'm the worst dancer in the world, the worst. And occasionally, growing up and being an actor, living in New York and things like that, I dated a handful of dancers, and they always said, "I'm going to teach you to dance." I'm going to, and it always at the end of the relationship, it was always like, "And you suck as a dancer."
And that's why the relationships failed, right? Because you couldn't dance.
Well, I'm a tenor, and tenors are only in love with themselves.
Hey, I can't disagree, so I'm not going to say anything. Do you remember the first musical you saw when you were growing up?
First musical I ever saw was Evita on Broadway.
The 19s.
Oh, yeah, my first Broadway musical was Evita. My first musical I ever saw was Finian's Rainbow at Jones Beach Theater on Long Island.
Oh yeah, I've never seen Finian's. Nobody does it anymore, really.
No, really, yeah.
Yeah. So you saw Evita on Broadway. Which version was that?
The Patti LuPone.
You
Mandy
gotta be kidding.
Yeah.
That and now you probably like at that point. How old were you?
I can't remember. 8, 9 years old, 10 years old.
Yeah. Now looking back, you appreciate it way more. If you'd been like this age seeing it, I bet it's totally different.
Well, mm, I it's hard to say because I think about that a lot, and I think that I was really I was intensely into the cast recording of Evita before I saw it, so
Mhm.
I think I was hyper aware of that I was walking in to not only see my first Broadway show, but that Mandy and Patty were there, and that and who knew that, you know, later in my life I would actually meet these people and know these people and
Wow.
work with these people. I mean, it's just it's unbelievable. But I, I would love to, the Peter Felicia does the time machine thing. What show would you go
Mhm.
back to see? And
Yes.
I think it would probably be, the original cast of Evita.
Really. That would have been incredible. I would have loved to have seen that. I've never actually thought about what I'd want to go back and see.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a standard Peter Felicia question that he asks. If you had a time
oh,
machine, what, it's the first, and people are always like Follies or Dolly or something like that. I think Evita is the one for me.
does it have to be Broadway or can it be any show?
Could be anything. I think that's
Okay.
his question.
Yeah, there was a Stratford show I would have up here in Stratford,
Yeah.
Ontario.
Yeah.
There was a show back in the 80s, the Boys from Syracuse.
Oh yeah.
It
Sure.
had I don't know if you know Colm Feore.
No, I don't
Um,
know, Colin.
you would know him from he's been in movies and does a ton of stuff. It's like these big Canadian performers, and
Hmm.
the show I saw it on a recording on TV. It was just brilliant and blew me away. So maybe that's what I do. I guess you're interviewing me now. So I guess
So,
kind of, that's what you do too, right? So
it's hard for me to have it on the other, to be on the other side of the microphone,
yeah.
because, Matt Tamanini, my partner at Broadway Radio, and I were just talking. Matt just surpassed 1,000 shows at Broadway Radio,
Wow.
and I was all excited about Matt's 1,000th show, and it's just a tremendous mark, and it's no different. It's just an arbitrary number. It's
Yeah.
no different than 999 or 1,001, but the round numbers thing is impressive. And then I thought to
Mhm.
myself, wow, I'm like, approaching 2,000 shows. So, but I think of it from that aspect of it. But in interviewing so many people over the years, it just becomes natural when you're talking to anybody to get into interview mode.
Mhm.
And I go to see friends and family at parties and things like that, and we start getting engaged in a conversation, and I realize I have to back off. I'm not the interviewer.
It's so true. That's so funny. So you're growing up, right? You're seeing these shows. When did you want to become an actor, and what did you do to do that?
Yeah, I did, school plays and community theater and various things in and around. Plus, yeah, growing up, I was on Long Island, which is just, you know, uh, about 40 miles. I lived in a town about 40 miles away from Manhattan, so it was
Mm,
pretty accessible to get in and out of Manhattan. And my parents were, supportive enough that they would take me to auditions, and I booked little things as a kid, and then
yeah.
did this stuff that kids do, uh, and then kind of reality set in. You change, your looks change, and your voice changes, and things like that, and you're in that in between stage where awkward doesn't really sell all that well.
Yeah.
And then I also really got into video games and technology. So
Okay.
that kind of took my video games, technology, and girls. There it was.
In
Maybe
that
not in that
order?
order.
Okay,
No.
I was just gonna say. Yeah, I don't blame you. I totally know what order. I had
Yeah.
the same order. So you tried to be an actor, and then you
Alphabetical.
realized exactly. So you tried to be an actor, and then you, like you said, it didn't succeed, right?
Yeah.
So you went on and you did other things in life, and then
Hmm.
what took you back to the Broadway radio? What started out in Broadway Stars?
Well, I was acting, and while I was doing one of my shows, I had an accident. I broke my back, and I was in the hospital and having a very hard time of it. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do to stay involved in the acting world? And so, as I mentioned, one of my other passions is technology, and this whole World Wide Web thing started up. And I said, hey, I should make a website. And so my natural thing about, I'm not a very good student. I'm more of a person who reverse engineers stuff. So I didn't really study technology and HTML to figure out how to create a website. I just started making a website and then reverse engineered all the existing websites and figured out how to make the website that I wanted to make. And I was, I thought the best thing to do was to make a website about theater. And that started Broadway Stars. And it was one of the first theatrical websites that was out there. We were actually in existence before, Playbill.com and Theatermania.com and before Broadway.com. And certainly it's one of the things that helped me stay attached to the theatrical community and then be part of the theatrical community worldwide.
Wow. Congratulations on that. That's fantastic that, you're a pioneer.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but sure. Okay.
We'll leave it at that. I think you should put that on your website. Pioneers of theater on the web. It's not untrue, but okay. So you started the website. Now, when did the podcast begin? The that sort of thing.
So, some people, drink, some people do drugs, and some people smoke, and I buy domains. So in this rash of, in the 90s, I bought lots of Broadway domains with ideas, and BroadwayRadio.com was going to be a streaming musical theater radio station. And it became more and more difficult from a financial perspective and from a licensing perspective to figure out how to make that work. And so I kind of took down the streaming Broadway radio station and just sat on the domain. And then a friend of mine, Matthew Murray, who was the chief theater critic at Talkin' Broadway at the time, he said to me, hey, we should make a podcast about, theater and Broadway. And so we actually got together with Matthew and Peter Felicia, and I got together and started doing This Week on Broadway. And like I said, that was about 10 years ago or so. And we've been doing it weekly ever since. And then just about 3.5 years ago, Matt Temenini and I started the daily podcast, the Monday through Friday Today on Broadway podcast, which is a 15 to 20 minute news of what's happened the previous day in the Broadway and global theatrical community. So, and then we have a lot of guest podcasts and hosts that host their own shows that do various different things as well. And so that's, how Broadway Radio came into be as it is today at the end of 2019.
Wow. And 10 years ago, there mustn't have been that many podcasts going on at that point.
No, there was Broadway Bullet, which was an occasional podcast with the Austin, what's his name from Shakespeare, Bridge Shakespeare, or something like that. He's been doing his podcast a while, but we were one of the few originals, and we have been the most with the longest continuing running podcast. I mean, Broadway Bullet took a couple of years off and has come back occasionally and things like that. But I think Broadway Radio is the longest running continuous Broadway podcast.
Wow, that's incredible. The consistency you've been doing it, and that the passion you must have to do this every day.
Well, the thing is that I'm a huge podcast listener. I'm a fan first, and I was like, there was nothing for me, so I wanted to create something so I could listen to something during my commute. So, I mean, as you probably know, I don't really participate all that much in Today on Broadway anymore, but it's the first thing I listen to every morning.
Yeah.
Every morning when I get up, I listen to Matt and Ashley talk about the Broadway news of the day. And because I'm a fan and I really wanted it to be there. So I knew how important it was to be consistent with the scheduling and have something, because people come to expect it. This is why the 6 p.m. news is the 6 p.m. news, or it was at one before we became a 24-hour news cycle. And it's why we have our morning news every morning. You know, the Today Show is an institution that makes, hundreds of millions of dollars for NBC because people like appointment viewing, and people like their podcasting to be on an appointment schedule as well.
How many listeners do you have now?
It's like impossible to quantify these things. We have we know what our downloads are.
Okay.
Our daily show averages in the 10,000 downloads in a 7-day span, and our weekly show, the Sunday show, averages at about 50,000 downloads. We have no way to really quantify it. We kind of know where their downloads are coming from because we can trace IP addresses for the downloads and things like that.
Yes.
We have no way of knowing if somebody got 2 minutes into the show or listened to the entire show. Sure. We have no way to really, get that feedback. Although earlier this year, we started a Patreon for support for Broadway Radio, and that's been not only amazing financially for us to get the financial support of our listeners, but also to kind of put a face to our listeners and get direct feedback from them of, what works, what doesn't work, how engaged they really are. Did they really listen to every show? We put out a lot of content. Yeah. I can't imagine that everybody listens to every show, but some people listen to some of the shows, and we get an idea of how we're doing, which is a really tough thing to do because you're talking into a microphone and you just don't know.
Preaching to the choir here.
You're like, am I talking to my mom, or am I talking to 10,000 people globally? And it's really interesting because one of the things that has come out of this that I didn't think about was the international listeners, the listeners from Europe, and the listeners from Asia, and the listeners from Australia. That our Australian base is so engaged with us.
Really?
And it was really interesting because we record the Monday show gets recorded on Sunday night, and we for many years published it as soon as we recorded it. And basically Sunday night is Monday morning in Australia.
Yes.
So they would have a Monday morning show from New York, and I didn't even think about that aspect of it. And then when we went to our Patreon model, where our Patreon subscribers get the show the night before, and then the rest of the world gets it in the normal feed at 8 a.m. In New York time. We had a huge influx of support from Australia, and I was like, why is this? And they were like, because we want to get it in the morning on our way to work. We don't want to get it on the way that night, because 8 a.m. in New York is 8 p.m. there, and so that's a day old information.
It's true. Wow. So you've got the radio station going. How do you get your guests? Because I've listened to it, and it's a lot of content and of news. But how do you get your guests to come on and talk to you? Because you mentioned you spoke to Mandy and Patty.
Yeah, I think that it is just fortunate that we have a nice name. Broadway Radio probably sounds a lot bigger to most people than it actually is. It's an illusion. It's the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Also, just being in New York and Broadway Star around since the 90s, and I know all the press rep. You'll know me, and when you're supporting a show, the press reps are out there get their show as much press as possible. They offer them up to us. It's really rare that we're not able to get somebody that we'd really like to get. I mean, we've been trying for a while to get Audra, and it's just I think it's really a matter of her schedule more than anything else. Yeah. There are some people who just don't really do press. Yeah. And so, but for the most part, I would say that we get 90% of the people we want. I mean, we got Julie Andrews.
Wow.
That's a lot of fun. We've had a lot of really great guests come on Broadway Radio.
That is very cool. Well, let's ask, who's been your favorite guest?
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot here.
Of course I am. And they're obviously listening. So I could ask you who's your least favorite guest, and that's way worse. So I won't do that.
Alexandra Silber was my favorite. Because we had a conversation. It was Matt Temenini and Al Silbs and me, and it was supposed to be a 15-minute, promo, you're in, you're out type of thing. It ended up being a 2-hour conversation a real deep conversation about life, and it was probably the most real interview that we've had that really showed who Al was. And it's all about, an acting class is letting your guard down and being raw and exposed. And it was just a great interview with her.
That's very cool. When I invite people on to be interviewed, they sometimes ask, well, how long is it going to be? And I'm like, I don't know. How long are we going to talk? Right. Because we could just go off on a tangent and talk for, I think the longest I spoke was 90 minutes. Yeah. Just because it just worked out and we clicked.
Yeah.
So that's very cool that you got somebody in there for 2 hours and entertaining yourselves and the audience as well. That makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Where do you see Broadway Radio going? Is it just do you think it's just going to keep going the way it is, or do you want to expand it, do video or anything like that?
No, I don't really want to do video. I think about it every now and then. I mean, the audio thing is already a challenge.
Yeah.
From a technology perspective, from a cost perspective, from a production time perspective, we do. The rule of thumb for me is that for every minute of recording, we have 3 minutes of post work to do. So an hour show takes 4 hours to prepare. Our Today on Broadway, which is, about 20 minutes or so, those, we get about 3 hours of preparation into that 20-minute show. Yeah. To do video, I think that it would be awesome. I would love it. But I think that I'm not sure that there's a business model that can support that. We would have to get a serious donor or advertiser to come in and foot that bill, because certainly right now we're running a bare bones operation insofar as cost goes. And one of my big goals for 2020 is I'd really like to make our sound quality better and our production quality better across the board for all of our shows. And that, that's going to cost, $10,000-$15,000 at least.
Yep. It's all money.
And that's just to make our sound a little bit better. And I'm not sure that, it's going to really make a huge difference insofar as is anybody to say, oh, I'm going to download the show because it sounds better, or I'm not going to download the show because this sound is not as good. I'm not sure, but I feel as though we have to spend this time and money and resources to make our sound quality better on Broadway radio across the board in all our shows.
Cool. Yeah, I agree in the video thing. I've gone back and forth. Should I do something? Should I not? And then I thought, no, the editing is a nightmare. It's just so much work. So
it's a nightmare. There's an arts radio show out of Connecticut or something like that, and they are a broadcast terrestrial thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get this guy's name. Hold on a second. Mark Auerbach.
Okay.
Mark Auerbach, pioneervalleyradio.com. He does he does these YouTube videos of their Arts Beat radio show from Hartford Stage. And they're up on YouTube, and I'd imagine that's how we would end up. But they seem to be shooting from an already established broadcast room. So it makes a difference that he's got access to that, and I think that they have great content, but after a while I'm like, who's watching this? They're sitting there talking into a microphone. Yeah. I'm not, and so does the video make sense? I'm not sure, because certainly I can't my Broadway radio and my podcast experience is that I'm going to and from work or to and from clients or something like that. I can't watch a video.
No,
I can't. That's a different thing than what I envisioned for Broadway radio.
Yeah, the podcast is so much easier to consume. Like you said, when you're driving, you're on the subway or whatever. Whereas if I have to choose between sitting down watching, some people in front of a microphone or watching a rerun of Game of Thrones, I'm going to be watching Game of Thrones. I got other things that I could be watching.
Sure, so. Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your co-hosts. Who are they, and how'd you get involved with them?
Oh, well, so Peter Felicia is an institution. He's been a journalist, a critic, a historian. He's an author. He's written many books, and not all about Broadway. He's written some baseball books that are really interesting as well. So Peter is just an anchor, and he's the reason why I really thought that Broadway Radio could make a go at it, because he's been with us from the very, very beginning, and the very first show 0001 or -1, the first couple of shows that were actually not released ever, because it's a learning curve, folks.
Yeah.
And the first ones you don't want to listen to. So Peter Felicia has been with us in the beginning. Matthew Murray was with us in the beginning, and then Michael Portantier joined us when Matthew left to do other stuff. Matthew is a technology journalist and moved out of New York and left Broadway Radio, and Michael stepped in. Michael Portantier, who was the former editor-in-chief of Theater Mania and has done a million other things, and he's got a castalbums.org website. It's a cast album database that's just absolutely amazing and wonderful.
Yes, I've been using that.
So
for the station.
So Michael, and then we've had a number of people through the years come and join us for the occasional show here and there, but then I invited Jan Simpson, who's got a blog called Broadway and Me, and Jan has been on This Week on Broadway a number of times, filling in for people who have been out and traveling. And then she also does the Stagecraft podcast on Broadway Radio Network. Jenna Tessa Fox, very similar. Jenna has got a podcast called Spotlight on Broadway Radio, where she does interviews with folks, and she also comes on This Week on Broadway. Carrie Purcell, an author, has been a guest host on Broadway Radio. Lauren Class Schneider, who is a producer and general manager, and she does class notes for Broadway Radio. And she's, she does a standalone show all the time. So there's a number of people. We've had a number of other folks come in and do small segments on the shows as well throughout the years. Natalie Nowak and all the other folks that they were doing little segments that we were trying to do in, sort of testing out things on Today on Broadway. We did a theater throwback segment. We did a calendar segment. We did various things like that. So they produced those segments. It really didn't fit in with the format, and the shows were getting really long, and so we ended up cutting those. But those are still people who are part of the family and come back. And Natalie is in the Hart School at the University of Hartford, studying musical theater, and she has a podcast series called On My Way to a BFA, which she talks about her experience from a freshman to senior in getting her BFA in musical theater. So it's been a lot of fun.
You have quite the number of alumni for Broadway Radio.
Well, it's just like everything in this business. People come and go, and they do projects, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But we're all still friends, and everybody's welcome to come back. I've tried for years to get Matthew Murray to come back, but he's sort of out of the Broadway scene right now, and he's like, I'm not sure I want to come back. So I'll get him one day.
Everyone always comes. It's theater. Your paths cross. They come together. They go away, and they come together. It's just the life of theater in general. Mm-hmm. That's very awesome. So tell us, where can they find your podcast?
Well, it's very hard to find it, because if you go to BroadwayRadio.com,
well, that was easy.
Be able to find all of our podcasts. Because we've been doing this for so long, we're pretty well established in anywhere that you can get a podcast. You can usually find Broadway Radio, and I can't think of really any major outlet that doesn't carry us. And we're fortunate enough to occasionally be carried on terrestrial radio at public radio stations.
Nice.
The United States Armed Forces Military Network has got their Armed Forces Radio, occasionally plays us, and in-flight entertainment on Delta sometimes plays us, and things like that. People report all over that, oh, we heard your show. We were we were in Macau, and we heard Broadway Radio.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Great. Well, thank you, James, for coming on, talking to me about Broadway Radio. But before you go, I have 3 questions that I have to ask you. I ask every guest.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong answers, but there is a wrong answer. So I just want to let you know that right away. All right. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Question number 1.
Okay.
Sondheim or Weber?
Oh, man. So, as I talked about, Evita was just, it was the basis of everything. So I have real long affinity for Andrew Lloyd Webber. And Stephen Sondheim is somebody who I have come to admire and praise. And I was just talking about They Hear Drums, We Hear Music from Passion.
Yes.
I think I would have to go with in the body of work with Sondheim, because it's just so much more emotional, and the cleverness of the lyrics of Sondheim just draw me in. But the energy of Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I think it really depends upon who Andrew is writing with.
Yes.
Whether,
Yeah. No, you know what? This one's been split 50-50 down the middle, so
Yeah.
you're okay. You actually split the 50-50 down the middle.
Yeah.
So good job.
Mhm.
Neither of them will be offended when they listen. All right. Question number 2. Now you've probably seen a lot of Broadway shows, a lot of shows in New York. So the question is, what Broadway show surprised you most with either its success or with its failure?
Hmm. Failure was the original production. Well, two of them I could think of: the original production of Sideshow and the original production of Urinetown. They failed for
Ooh.
different reasons. Urinetown failed because of 9/11.
Mm, yeah.
Urinetown, that was their opening, was
Oh,
9/11,
that's right.
and it was such a brilliant show that deserves to have a first class revival. Um, and then Sideshow, uh, the original production of Sideshow, I I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it, and I couldn't figure out why people didn't love it. And it was just one of those things, and I guess it wasn't for the people didn't see in it what I saw in it. I love the original production, and I really didn't like the revival of Sideshow.
Hmm.
So yeah, and Passion. We were just talking about Passion. It's a funny thing about Passion was that I saw it very, very early in the run,
Yeah.
um, and I hated it. I hated it, and then I got a recording of it and listened to it. And I was like, "Oh my god, I love this show. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I have
Yeah.
to go back and see it." And I went back to see it, and I hated it.
Okay, good. I'm not the only one because
And,
I did the same thing. I listened to the soundtrack. I love the music. It is
cast recording.
beautiful. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Brain fart. Cast recording. Sorry, I was okay. The reason why I was trying to I went to a website that markets radio stations,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and they only had one choice.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah, I know.
soundtrack.
Yeah,
And
I know.
I was like, that's not what I am.
I know.
But I had to
Yeah.
put it under that. So that my brain was there today. So yes, I apologize to everyone listening. It is cast recording. But I love the cast recording to passion. But then when I saw it, I fell asleep. I was bored.
I think it had to do with the direction and the sliding walls and the darkness of the actual the way in which the scenes were lit and
Maybe.
the staging. It was very dark, and it.
But I saw
But
it in Toronto, so I don't
you
know if
saw
that
it.
was the same
Oh, you saw it in
direction of it.
Toronto?
Yeah,
Oh,
so I don't know. Maybe it's just
okay.
it's a slow show. It is just
It has to.
It
You
has
have
to
to
be.
pick it up.
But
You got to pick that show up, because if you don't pick up your cues in that show, that could go on forever. But
yes.
no, so Passion. So that surprised me in some ways, just because when you listen to the cast recording and you're like, how did this show fail?
Yeah.
But most Sondheim shows fail financially anyway.
Yep. But they will live forever.
Yeah.
On CD and record, and CD and record. I choose the worst and the oldest.
You got the 8 tracks right here.
I have so many
78
cassettes here of shows. It's ridiculous. But cool. So my final question to you, and most important question:
Mm-hmm.
audiences eating food in the theater, yes or no?
No.
Good answer.
I've worked at a number of dinner theaters.
Well, yeah.
But the thing is that it's really becoming very. People are so selfish.
Yeah.
They only think about themselves. In so many circumstances, and you go to the theater and you're. And I've had bad audience members my entire life of going to the theater. I can't just say it's new. It has always been bad audience members.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite memes is the board outside of Les Mis that's got the name of the character and the actor playing the character.
Mhm.
And it's Jean Valjean, played by the girl who knows every word in the show, sitting behind me singing every line. You know, we've had that at Les Mis, we've had that at Hamilton, and we had,
Yeah.
you know, I was very strict and stern with my children. My children have been very, very lucky to see Hamilton a number of times, and they know Hamilton inside and out. And I'm like, this is your time to be quiet. It's not a sing along.
Yes.
So, yeah. Same thing. No food.
Yes. And you know what? I think for me, it's become a double reason. Not just the respect of, chewing and eating and making noise. Every time I'm in the theater and the lights come up at the end, I take pictures of the garbage on the floor that people leave. Because it's just disgusting, just the number of cups and
selfish.
Yeah. And there's just my second reason for no to food in the theater. But
yeah. It's even these glasses of wine in these unspillable cups that they charge $10 for on top of the $20 for the wine. But I was like, I got to listen to somebody slurping wine with ice and slushing around and things. I'm like, I just don't want to. Just it's me crazy.
I know. Some people say, "Oh no, we got to make it accessible to more people, etc." And I'm like, I don't know. I'd rather have a half-empty theater that's nice and quiet, but not from a producer standpoint, of course. But
yeah, no, I can understand what they're saying, but
if you can't go 2 hours without, or just eat in the lobby, simple as that.
Exactly.
Oh well, those were 3 correct answers. So
thank you.
Good job. You passed.
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, thank you, James, for coming on. If people want to listen to the podcast, obviously any major place that supplies podcasts, BroadwayRadio.com, and also at 8:00 on our station, Monday to Friday, we put you guys on because you do such a great job, and we want to share you with the world.
Great. Thank you so much again for all your support. We really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Well, that is it for Be Our Guest for this week. We had a great conversation with James Marino from Broadway Radio. Tune in next week. Who knows who we're going to have as a guest or guests as they share their love and passion for musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff, and I'll see you when I see you. We love supporting and promoting the creators of musical theater throughout the world, and we would love to have your support as well. Go to musicaltheaterradio.com and click on the Become a Patron button, because a supportive community is a strong community.